Dave's 5 Hot Takes, yeah! Welcome back, everybody, to Dave's 5 Hot Takes. This is Dave. So excited you guys are back. This is a really fun episode. So as you know, I've had friends and artists and songwriters on to talk about music, talk about their hot takes. One of my favorite podcasts in the world is called Great Song Podcast. And these two guys, JP and Rob, know music. They love music, and they really know it. If you like podcasts and you like music at all, you have to go listen to this podcast. I have to give a shout out to John McLaughlin, because for years and years, I just wasn't a podcast guy until about probably 4 or 5 years ago. And John always listens to podcasts. And so he was like, you got to get into them. And then it was sort of like, once I got in, it just was like this deep dive. And this podcast is one of the reasons that I love podcasts, because it's just really fun listening to people who love what they're talking about. And JP and Rob are definitely those two guys. Their podcast is really fun because they take a song most of the time, and they'll just do a really deep dive on everything about the song, from how it was written, where it was written, who wrote it, where they recorded it, what kind of instruments, what kind of amps, what the studio was like, how the song performed on the chart. I mean, it's unbelievable the depth they go to. And for people like me, I thrive. I live on this kind of information. It's one of my favorite sort of geekeries. It sounds like a really weird donut shop. Welcome to the geekery. And I've had the pleasure, and you'll hear me talk about this, I've had the pleasure of being on their podcast a couple times. And so I thought it would be really fun to have them on, namely because they just know so much about music. And again, that's something I really love to celebrate on this podcast, is music. And these guys really know it. And so, it was a joy having them on, and you can hear their expertise. And this may be the deepest dive we've done on this podcast so far. And so if you love music, buckle up, because these guys love it too. And they really, really, really bring some fun takes on this. And again, just last plug for them. I'll do it again in this intro when I have them on here in a second. But please do go listen to the podcast. It is one of my favorites. It's everything I love sort of in a podcast. It's two really funny guys talking about music and giving really cool takes and insights that are really well done, super well researched, and really fun to listen to. So without any further ado, here's me talking to JP and Rob from Great Song Podcast. Okay, guys, welcome to Dave's 5 Hot Takes. I'm really excited about today's interview. These two guys are two of my favorite. They're two of my favorite new friends. New friends. New friends are friends forever. You're welcome. But this is JP and Rob from one of my favorite podcasts called the Great Song Podcast. And I have been lucky enough to be a guest on this podcast a few times. I call myself the third member of the Trinity of the hosts of the podcast. But I want to tell you guys how great this podcast is. So here's kind of the way that I would describe what these guys are doing. It is everything that I sort of wish that I could do, but I don't have the skill set or the lawyer like detail and digging to pull off. I never have a stronger connection to people, I feel like, than when I find people who love music like I love music. And, you know, it's funny because you'd think living in Nashville, everybody that does music loves music. And they do in their own version. But it's a pretty uncommon thing when you find people who like love music, you know? And so when I met these two guys, I was like, oh, these guys love music. And that's really what the podcast is. It's this super deep dive, really well done, hysterical, fun, and incredibly informative, song by song, sometimes a collection of songs, sometimes a little more band centric or artist centric, but deep dives on recordings and songs that were recorded. And so, you know, I love how you guys do you do the Meet the Band, where you hear the guys and the women that played on projects, or the gear they use, which still blows my mind. But I love the podcast. So being on the podcast so much, I thought I've got to get these guys on today's 5 Hot Takes, because this is what I thought about this podcast, and this is how I'll qualify it. I think this may be the most professional this podcast ever gets. Like, this may be, and that, like, this isn't just people sort of like, you know what I think is cool? Like, I would put you guys up in that echelon of like, you know what you're talking about. And and that's one of the reasons I love y'all's podcast so much and I have so much respect for y'all is because you really love what you do and you're really good at what you do. So when I was like, man, it would be so fun to have you guys on so we can actually talk. Like, this is going to be some real shop talking. This isn't like, I feel like it can get into that world sometimes where it's like, man, the bass line on that song is so lame. And I'm like, it is lame, right? And like, yeah, it's lame. Where I feel like, you guys know too much to say lame. You'd be like, let me tell you why. That Hofner he played, it had a bad pickup on the, or whatever it is. But I'm thrilled you guys are here. Thanks for doing this.
You just set us up way too much. I'm wearing a homemade t-shirt, like for real. We're not professional. I'm wearing a homemade Fab 5 t-shirt because we're talking about 5 hot takes. So I went 5 with this. So yeah, we're not professional at all. What are you talking about? Those? Thank you, Dave, for the kind words. But this is JP, by the way, and
I'm Rob.
We're both dudes. I sound a little high on the mic, but I'll go ahead and tell you, I get called ma'am, I get called darling on some of these interviews, and I'm like, actually, sir, I'm a dude. So JP, I will tell you what it stands for maybe sometime, but I'm a male, and that is Rob.
That's right. Also a male. Yeah.
Also double males. So here's what I wanted to know. I was thinking, how did y'all meet each other? Like, how long have y'all known each other? I don't know that I know this.
We've known each other 20 years. Wow. We met in college. Actually, we met before college
I'll tell you how. Let me tell the meeting story because I met Rob because he was playing. We both grew up in the Church of God. We're both CCM guys or whatever, but we grew up and they have this thing called Teen Talent. And Rob was playing a Wolfgang through a 5150 at Teen Talent and just shredding. And it was him, a drummer, and a sax player. No bass, and he's just like destroying it. And I was like, I've got to meet that guy. So
I have to hit pause for a second.
Yeah, you're good.
How did you come to that iteration of a band?
It's what we had in the youth group. It's like that's exactly. We didn't know anybody that played bass, so like that's why
he hadn't met me yet. So
there was some guy at the back of that. Where was this happening?
Okay, so it's at like the national sort of convention for the Church of God.
Oh my gosh!
Right? So
where? What city?
St. Louis. St. Louis.
I can just imagine there was an A&R scout who stumbled into this ballroom. He's smoking. He smells like smoke. You guys take the stage, and he's like, "This is brilliant." He's like, "I've got to sign these kids."
Yeah,
because it's kind of got that morphine. You remember morphine that had like this like. He's like, and you guys are like, this is what we got. He's thinking like, these guys purposely put together this sound spectrum.
Yes.
And these guys are geniuses.
Next level. And so the funny thing was like, they're just doing all these Teen Talent contestants throughout the day. And we're set up in a room where they've got like bookstores and stuff like that.
I'm running the music department of the bookstore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I got to meet that guy.
And so it's like, just come and go as you please, and mostly like older people who are traveling to this thing and they go to this assembly for like a whole week.
Right.
And so they introduce us and we get on stage and I go, who likes the Gaither vocal band? And they're like, yeah. And I go, you're going to hate us. And then we kick into our first song.
Gosh.
We just ripped in.
I was just wondering if anybody ever started any conversation, forget stage, with who likes GVB. Like, when has that ever opened a conversation, much less a show?
And they're like, oh, I take that from my heart. I take GVB every morning.
It slows my cardiac arrhythmia down. You know what's so funny that I love about you guys? I was laughing so hard listening to y'all's podcast. Which one was it? It's the one where y'all do like all the CCM deep dive, like the Dove Awards from 1998.
Oh yeah, that was the Dan Hasseltine.
When you had Dan on, and I was crying, laughing that morning, running. Y'all trying to figure out who the bands were, and then it was like these heavy metal CCM bands. But one thing that I think is so funny to hear that story, because when I moved to Knoxville, I was playing drums, and I joined a Christian like band, like we were this like rock and roll Christian band, and I was playing drums in it. But if you have done that circuit at all, there are things that you know and share with people who have also done it that are so intimate and so bizarre. And it's like there's a language around that scene and what you've seen and the kind of people that come to those kind of shows. But like I have some of the most bizarre memories from those 2 years of being in that, like, pop rock CCM band because we wrote original songs and we were really trying to do it. And some of the places that we played and some of the people you meet, I mean, we did a show where a guy spoke in tongues that had never happened to me. And it was just like so wonderfully awesome and weird, you know?
Yeah.
And then, playing on the back of like, the tractor trailers where they just pull the back up into a field.
Oh yeah.
You're like, yeah. Oh man, that is a very so y'all know each other a long time. Was the love of music always shared? I mean, obviously, JP, if you're working in the music section, Rob's on stage. That's going to be a pretty quick.
Sure. Well, that's how we met, but it was like a 5-minute conversation, and then we both end up at the same university. We go to Lee University in Cleveland, and they have different choirs that you can try out for. So there's 5 auditions for the guitar player for this band. It's called Ladies of Lee. It's all girls because we're smart like that. All girls choir.
I was going to say, well played.
So I'm the last audition. Rob's first, and I don't know his name or whatnot. So you see the list. So Rob does his audition. Obviously, he's going to get it because he's the best musician on the planet. He's fantastic. If I'd have known that guy was auditioning, I wouldn't have auditioned. So we do the auditions, whatever, and they call us afterwards, and they're like, "Hey, how would you feel about having 2 guitar players? Would you?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I show up the first day. And it's Rob. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's you. It's like, hey, it's you. And it was like,
band guy.
Yeah, I know. So we were like this rock band with an all-girls choir.
So we were like, how quickly can we be roommates?
This has some of the overtones of the end of Dumb and Dumber. It's not quite as sensual and or sexual, but it does have that like you were the 2 masseuses for the all women's vocal group.
It was a lot less sexy than that. It was mostly we got to carry all the heavy stuff.
Yeah. You get to load the bus.
Yeah, that was as close you got. So a couple of things I wanted to ask y'all, because obviously you love music. What for each of y'all was the sort of inciting incident that not that you liked music, but you really were like, man, I love this. Was there a concert? Was it a song that came on the radio one time? Was there an age you hit where you heard a song and went, this makes me, I like this more than most people do. Like, what was that moment?
For me, it was lifelong because my parents are both musical, both always sang in church. And so from day one, it was just there. And so, and my dad was in a Southern gospel groups. He played bass in Southern gospel groups all the while I was growing up. So I grew up on harmony and, those the certain kind of things that come with like Southern gospel that you only get in Southern gospel.
They're incredible. Which they do the best that anybody does.
Yeah. And so it was always there for me. And so I remember I told my mom, when I think I was either 6 or 8, I remember clearly. I remember exactly where we were in the car on the road, and I was like, "Mom, I'm gonna play music for my career." And she was like, "Okay, well, make sure you have something else that you can do."
That's where like she looks over at your dad and they just look at each other for a minute and you're like
oh,
what?
crap.
And they're like, no, that's great. You want to say it or do you want me to? You should say it.
Like we tried so hard. We gave him books. We gave him, baseball. We tried so many other things.
Mine was, I was at this teen talent thing, and there was this guy playing guitar. He was playing a Wolfgang through a 5150. And I was like, man, I love music. This is awesome. They got a sax player. No, so
you're like, this is the CCM morphine. I love these guys.
Yeah, I'm probably gonna throw out some sports analogies. So through this, I'm gonna go ahead and prep you. So if I do that, I love music, but I also love sports. So if they intertwine, I'm not trumping one over the other. So that's just a little disclaimer of what may come throughout this thing. I already mentioned the Fab Five thing, but I'm like Rob. I grew up around it my whole life, and there was not one real moment other than the joke there. I really don't have one.
Yeah, just
anticlimactic answer.
Yeah. It's weird. I have there was, I think when I really, this is so weird because I grew up in Mississippi, not around a lot. I mean, I listened to music. My mom and dad loved music, but I remember so succinctly a moment where I went to a friend's of mine. I was probably in like 9th grade, and he had a stereo set up, and he had the greatest hits of 1978, the Time Life CD. It was like. And he put on that CD, and I remember standing in front of the stereo like something was wrong with me. Like that kid, you're like the Forrest Gump where he's like, is he like me? And he tilts his head. But I remember standing in front of the studio, in the stereo, and American Woman comes on, and then Dust in the Wind comes on, and then More Than a Feeling Boston comes on. And I remember something changed. Like I was like, I feel so strongly about this music. Like, it was like a conversion. Where it's like, I got to go tell people how great music is. So it's funny because I wasn't, you guys just grew up with the bug and I sort of converted later. That's why you guys are OGs.
I will tell a follow-up to that I'll use in one of my takes. So there'll be a thing that made me develop a love for the research of music that I'll save that for one of my.
Oh, I like that. Gave a little preview there.
And that just made me think, Dave, your story made me think about the first time I ever wrote a song. Which really hooked me on that. Like that's when I went, oh, this is another thing. Like I love music, and then my cousin taught me an A7 chord, and you can kind of take an A7 chord and move it like up and fret a couple, and you get this nice little flavor. And so
James Taylor.
Yeah. And so like in 5 minutes I had a song written with two of my cousins, and we sang it for like the family, and I was like, okay, this is another level.
That's like injecting it right into your brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you go from appreciating something to performing it, and then people clap and you're like, oh, what is this?
Synthetic love. It's fantastic.
There's our next hit.
You guys will notice as we go through this, Rob is we have this game called Stump the Genius. Rob is the smartest musical of the two of us by far. He's the talent. He's the Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen combined, and they joke. And I'm like Steve Kerr. Rob,
are you the Ho Grant?
Oh man, I'm not even that. I'm like if he's Magic Johnson and Kareem, I'm like Kurt Rambis. I'm just the guy that works really hard and knows my role and is just happy to be in the gym.
Hey, you don't win championships without
I know, right?
You're darn right.
Oh my gosh, you got to have your BJ. You got to have your BJ Armstrong out there just launching them from the sidelines.
John Paxson.
Oh, that's exactly right. So do y'all remember sort of like your first music moments? Not when you fell in love, but like, do you have a song that you remember being the first song you heard, or the concert you went to that you really loved, or kind of like your first moment that was musical?
I remember the first time I cried during a guitar solo. I've told this one. With me and Rob were at a show. It was Dream Theater, Joe Satriani and King's X, and Tate Boer came out and played Cigarettes. And I was like, what is that song? What is that beautiful noise? And I remember standing and crying while Tate Boer played a guitar solo amidst all the smoke and sweat and everything.
Wait, how old were you at this point?
I was like 42. No, I'm just kidding. No. It was too old to be crying at a guitar solo.
You were working through some other things.
That's right. No.
That would be an amazing show, by the way.
Oh, it was wonderful.
It was incredible.
Where was that?
That was at the Tabernacle in Atlanta, and Mike Portnoy held his stick down, and we got to sing into a stick in one of the parts, and I was like, this world is wonderful. He threw a stick into the riser, and his drum tech caught the stick and threw it back down to him, and
while they're playing
didn't miss a lick. It was wonderful. So
what?
Yeah,
it's fantastic. And I think mine was honestly, so I started taking piano lessons real young, but it never really, like, the piano lessons part of it never really took. I always just played by ear and cheated and whatever. But I think the first thing that hooked me on playing was what's it called? Right Here Waiting by Richard Marx.
Oh.
The piano part to Right Here Waiting at 5 years old, I went, there's something to that. And so I think that was it for me.
And you can tell by the prodigy of Rob, he was playing in church at 5. He was playing drums. Tell the truth, Rob.
No, not at 5.
Young.
But I started
5
playing
and a half, technically. Okay, let's just come on, guys. It's funny. One of my first like Nashville moments. Like, I love Richard Marx. I mean, his greatest hits is always in rotation somewhere in the year for me. I'll have a moment. I'm like, I want to hear Hazard right now, or like, I love him. And I was interning at this studio called Emerald that was a voiceover part of the studio. So it was in the back of the studio, and it's kind of a little room. And this guy did a ton of like voiceover stuff, or like he did all the CMT stuff where the guy has this voice and he'd call in from Chicago and they would do it live stream. Which was huge at the time because it's like 1999, 98. And so anyway, I walk in the studio one day because I think I was there 3 days a week, 2 days a week. And the guy's like, hey, we're not going to be working today. If you don't mind just kind of hanging out, I've got a guy that's actually using the room for a co-write. And I was like, oh, cool. Yeah, he's like, you can just hang out or sit in the thing and just make sure they don't need anything for a few hours. I was like, great. I said, who is it? And he's like, oh, it's Richard Marx. And I was like, what? and this is right when This I Promise You was at its zenith.
Okay.
So I was like, oh my gosh, because he obviously wrote that song for NSYNC. And so did I stress the wrong thing there? NSYNC. NSYNC. Is it NSYNC or is it Taco Bell or Taco Bell? NSYNC, NSYNC.
Put the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable.
Yeah. Anyway, so I'm kind of geeking out. I'm like, Richard Marx. And then the coolest part of the day, and this was where I really got geeked out, is this phone call comes in, he hangs up. The guy I'm working with, nobody got in there yet. And he's like, hey, do you have a guitar on you? I was like, I actually have my guitar in my car because I had a show that night. And he's like, do you mind if Richard uses it? I was like, Richard Marx, do you use my guitar? And he was like, yeah. And so Richard shows up like 30 minutes early because I think he got a taxi or something. So he and I sat in there and we talked for probably 30 or 45 minutes, just he and I. And I was, 21. I couldn't have been more green and excited. He's sitting there strumming my guitar.
He's playing your first act guitar.
Oh my God. I'm telling you. And that is still one of my favorite memories. I asked him you can imagine, I asked him a billion questions. He was so kind, like answered every one of them. And then I came back later. He was like, man, thanks for letting me use the guitar. I was like, oh my God, you wrote your fingers that wrote, I'll be waiting. Strummed,
You hit that home run as an Oakland A in that music video, and it was wonderful.
You and Dennis Eckersley, just with a ticket to kick it.
Both of them wearing the white jerseys, so nobody can be the home team in that video. It's an error. They're both wearing white jerseys.
Yeah, you guys are liars. So with the podcast, who have y'all had on so far? Who would you say is one of your favorite? And I'm going to let y'all qualify. I will go for either favorite, most interesting, surprising. Somebody you had on that you went, wow, I didn't think that would be as cool as it was, or was super cooler, or they had the coolest stories, or they were just fun to talk to.
Okay, so I think the biggest two surprises that we've had. One would be David Wilcox. He was a surprise in one way. We just weren't ready for him in any kind of way.
Yeah, he's a quirky dude.
Yeah, and so he was way deeper and way heavier than we expected, and so to the point where it threw us off of our. We had to start asking different kinds of questions because clearly
what's
we brought
the fastest
to the table
animal on land?
Yeah, exactly.
You ever been in a plane?
Because what we brought to him was just not going to work.
Yeah,
so,
right.
So that was unusual in that way. And then I think the one that surprised us the most because we just didn't know how freaking awesome he was Rupert Holmes, the guy that escaped the Pina Colada song. We just, you kind of expect it to be like, here's a guy that wrote the song and it's quirky and whatever, but the guy's a genius. He's just like off the charts brilliant. He's written this musical called The Mystery of Edwin Drood that plays on Broadway. And it has how the ending of the movie Clue had 3 alternate endings. It's like that, but it has each character has their own possible ending and the audience votes every single night to the point where there's like over 300 potential different twists to the ending, and the cast just has to be ready to go for whatever the ending is that night. And he writes novels and all this TV shows and all this stuff. The guy was just off the charts brilliant and really super engaging.
Wow. My answers would be different. I would go Mark Farner and Don McLean just because those were big for me. But the craziest story I think is probably the Credence story. I was at work and I work for Enterprise, and I was getting these emails and I'm just replying to emails and they're like, JP called Mr. Clifford. So I called this phone number. I'm like, hey, is this Mr. Clifford? And he's like, yeah, but you can call me Cosmo. And it clicks. Holy cow, this is the drummer for CCR. And so I was like, yeah. He's like, I've been trying to get a hold of you and I keep getting Enterprise. I'm like, well, that's my job. He's like, I want to come on your podcast. I was like, yeah. So I go out in the parking lot and I call and we talk for like 20 minutes about random things. And I'm like, yeah, we got a spot. So I call Rob doesn't answer. So who's the person you call after that? I call my dad, and my dad's like, oh my gosh. He's like, you talked to the drummer for Credence. He's like, quit your job. And I'm like, Dad, I can't quit my job. But yeah, so I think that was the biggest shock for me was him. That would be that one.
So I'm gonna give each of you three answers. three like boxes for this one. Who, if you could have anybody on the podcast to talk about, a song or their career or whatever, who are the three for each of y'all?
All right, my white whale is Weird Al Yankovic.
Okay.
That's my number one get. If I could get anybody in the world,
That's amazing.
If Mozart was still alive, Weird Al would still be my number one. You know what I'm saying? So that's my number one. Bruce Hornsby would be my number two. And then at this point, now that Eddie Van Halen has left us, probably Billy Joel would be my number three.
Yeah, those are good.
Those are our three. We've got to put the person that started it, Mark Cohn. We haven't got him yet for Walking in Memphis.
Yep.
And then I don't know how to pick my next two because I want to go random. John Petrucci from Dream Theater. And then somebody that you could probably help us with. I really want to get Dan Huff. I like, I'm a giant fan. We haven't gotten him. And there's one in my hot takes that I'm going to drop. So, but
well, you intro this well and you give us a little teaser. I think it may be time to jump in and do the 5 hot takes. And what's fun about this is I told the guys, for all the listeners out there, I didn't want a cumulative 5 hot takes. I wanted each of them to have 5 because I knew it was going to be too good. And it was too much of an ask to be like, hey, just combine them. Cause then, that could cause some infighting and,
we end up breaking up the show.
Yeah. So I say each of y'all, let's do one each until we get to the end of this thing. Cause I'm so excited about these. I want y'all to know. This is really fun. So, who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Rob. Kick it off.
All right, Rob, okay. Let's get the first hot
take.
And
one thing too, we didn't prep these together. Like we did. This is like we do better. On our show. We don't talk about anything before till we go live. Like we don't practice. We just go. So we may have the same hot take. Who knows? But I have a list of 9 that I've narrowed down to 6, and I'm going to pick one on the spot that gets cut. So I don't know.
How amazing would it be, like you said, JP, that y'all literally all they were 5 for 5 the same.
That'd be fantastic.
Like y'all had avatared together. Like your heads had just become one.
I've got some
okay, kick us off, Rob. Hot take 1.
Okay, let's start with this. Caribbean Queen by Billy Ocean.
Yes.
Okay, we all know the song.
Yes.
Queen. If you listen to Caribbean Queen, then listen to Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, they're the same song production wise. Billy Ocean, whoever produced that track, 100% ripped off Billie Jean down to the like trumpet part and the little it's all
my gosh,
the drum loop, the bass line. It is 100% a ripoff of Billie Jean.
Holy cow. The thing that's crazy, and it's not embarrassing, it says I know that song really well. So like I'm playing it in my brain. I'm like,
yeah.
I love that freaking song.
And the little set. I mean, it's all there. It's all the elements.
Isn't it amazing to think how much like hits have to do with the songs that come after it? You know, when you have a global hit like Billie Jean, it's impossible that somebody's not going to be like, let's just do something in that world. Yeah. A side shoot of Billy. I've always wanted to talk about this on the show, but that song, Billy Ocean, that song Suddenly, chord wise, life has new meaning to me. Beauty up above, things I never get noticed of. Wake up suddenly and you're in love. It has got some of the weirdest, like LSD induced chord changes. That is one of mine. I have a little place in my head of songs, and I'm always like, how in the world did they pull that off? And how in the world did somebody at a radio? And I mean, it's a hit. It is like you hear it and you're like, I love that. But you have to think them sitting in the room. They're like, I can't believe we're doing this, man. I can't believe we're doing it. It's like they had a pinwheel where they were just spinning it and throwing a dart, and whatever chord they hit, they were like, well, we got to play a D here. I don't know how to make that work.
Wheel is spoken.
But Billy Ocean to me he's a stud. He's a super stud. That's gonna mess my day up because now I'm gonna be sitting there thinking like, oh my gosh, he just jacked Billie Jean.
It's hardcore.
Yeah, you're gonna notice the difference in our hot takes. Is Rob's are gonna be really smart, and mine's like, I have a belly button, like the complete opposite. So, good call, Rob. I like it. Number 1 for me, Just Like a Pill by Pink has the most rocking triangle part in music history. Okay. So everybody take a second, go to second 47 of the song when the chorus starts. Y'all know Just Like a Pill, right? I can run just as fast as I can. That little song, whatever.
Yeah. Oh, dude.
Listen to how high in the mix the triangle is, and he is going to town. So then I started thinking of other songs with rocking triangle, and I cannot find anything off the top of my head. The only Big Yellow Taxi has a little bit of triangle in it, and there's one triangle hit at the end of Amanda, Boston, before it goes into the chorus. There's one little hit. But in terms of rocking triangle, Alicia Beth Moore, a.k.a. Pink, killing it. Dallas Austin producer, wonderful.
Oh, yes. So another one of those, and I think it's actually Finger Cymbals, but in Sailing, the bridge in Sailing.
Okay.
Where it goes, ching, 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 ching. You hear this little ching. And before I knew what it was, I was always like, man, the producer must have played that, or the engineer, because it's way too loud. Like, it's way too loud.
Yeah.
But I think technically, because forever I thought it was triangle, and then the more I listened, I was like, I think that's Finger Cymbals, which is even funnier that somebody as a producer, Michael O'Mardian, who produced that song, was like, you know what we could use on this, guys? What are the little guys? You have Finger Cymbals. Where are those? Yeah. Well, I know a guy in Chinatown that's open till midnight, maybe, but it's that shing, 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 that little sound, but it's so loud.
I mentioned that I'm kind of the band guy. I research who plays what, and I cannot find who the triangle player is on that for the world of me. I'm guessing it's probably the producer just doing it in post or something.
Or it's a loop.
It's a loop or something like that. But he's
they just cranked up to high heaven.
And that guy's brilliant. He did Dallas Austin. He's done everything. He did It's So Hard to Say Goodbye for Boyz II Men, Blue Cantrell stuff.
Waterfalls.
TLC, he's done all the stuff with TLC. Yeah, so he's
that guy's a stud.
Anyway, Rockin' Triangle.
Also, quick hot take on the side, which I want to do on a hot take for real, is maybe I'd say top 5 bass lines of all time, Waterfalls by TLC.
Ooh,
bass line is hot magma fire.
I work with the trumpet player's son for a while. So there you go.
There it is. At Where Cosmo Called You and Surprised You Made
Right, that's right.
Those are good. Okay, let's hear 2. Let's what you got?
Hot take 2.
All right. Hot take 2. Lucy Silvas mentioned this a little bit in your recent episode with her about losing my religion. Brilliant episode, by the way. I loved her, and I didn't know her, so thanks for introducing.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome.
To her. But I'm going to bring it into. First of all, I think a more extreme example of what she talked about, and I'm going to bring it into country music, where I think it's even more rare. Also pop music, but "Shameless" by Garth Brooks / Billy Joel.
Yep.
Doesn't have a chorus. It just flows from one section to the other. The closest thing it has to a hook even is him going, "Well, I'm shameless" at the beginning of each, a few of the verses. But there's nothing that it comes back to. It's a verse, a bridge, a solo, and an outro.
Yeah, because that control over me and then call my life that's really a bridge.
Yeah. It never comes back to like a chorus or even a big hook. There's nothing that repeats in that song ever, except for him occasionally saying, "I'm shameless."
Does have a nasty guitar solo though.
Oh man. And steel.
Dude, that is fascinating. Because that really is the hook. I'm shameless. And it's that long.
Yeah.
Done. God, that is crazy to think about. I'm shameless. I love that little look. When I'm good loving you. Man, that is nuts. I'm sitting in my brain is just like, no.
It was like the biggest, that was the biggest song in the country world.
You know what that song always makes me think of is it's like an iteration of the Bob Dylan. It's like a bigger, more rowdy version. It's from the same family lineage as To Make You Feel My Love. Now that's weird, but what I mean is it kind of does that same thing. There's not a real chorus, quote unquote.
And a lot of people have covered it too.
Yes, and as Billy Joel covered that, which is actually what made me think of it. But they kind of have that same thing where it's like you don't really get a hook, but yet it works.
Yeah, it's like
crazily
a folk
well.
Song,
yes,
that's just
turned up.
Yeah, it's turned up.
Yeah, God, shameless. Now that's gonna be stuck with just that one line. I'm shameless.
I remember, so that song, whenever I hear Garth's version of Shameless, I weirdly always think of Travis Tritt, because when I was a kid, when Shameless came out, it was my favorite song.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the year, my local country station, shout out US 101, what up? They did the 100 countdown, top 100 of the year countdown at the end and countdown to number one. And so the DJ gets to the top 2 and he's like, there are 2 songs left on this countdown. And one of them is Garth Brooks. Here he is at number 2 with Shameless. And I went, no! Number 1 was Anymore by Travis Tritt.
Oh,
and
man.
I was like, no, just don't.
How does Anymore beat Shameless?
That's exactly what I said. Like, fantastic song. Love it. But come on, Shameless, dude. Come on.
Jeez.
Maybe if it had a chorus, maybe it'd have been number 1.
That was what knocked him out. Like, listen, we got to the very end and somebody said, what's the chorus? And we couldn't answer it. So Anymore just popped right up there. God, that's good.
All right, number two for me. This is probably my favorite, so I want to make sure I get it out here in case people don't make it all the way to 5. In case they cut us off, they're like, okay, we're done with these guys. So I might as well jump ahead to my favorite. Okay, I want Jesse Frederick to write the theme song of my life when I die. And those of you guys that don't know who Jesse Frederick is, I'm going to tell you. He wrote 4 songs in the 80s that you'll know because they were 4 theme songs for all of TGIF. And they're in 4 different keys. So let me help. I brought this $20 classical guitar here. No,
Okay.
but so you'll know as days go by, the Family Matters theme song.
Yes.
Jesse Frederick. Okay.
Okay.
Let's see. What's the other one? The standing tall on the wings of my dreams. Perfect Strangers. Jesse Frederick. Step by Step. Jesse Frederick. And then the whatever happened to predictability, that one.
No
Full
way.
House wrote all 4 of them in 4 different keys. He controlled my childhood. Jesse Frederick. Those were the shows. You know, you go Family Matters, Perfect Strangers, Full House, Step by Step. I normally didn't stay up for Step by Step because it was the last one, and I was like, man, it's 10 o'clock and I'm 9. It's time to go to bed. But yeah,
I love that you had to tell yourself that.
I know. It's like, let's use some wisdom, Mosher. You know, tomorrow you got to get up and watch Muppet Babies. So it's like, you know, so that's Saturday morning. And then Saved by the Bell stuff. But so like, I want that guy's going to write he's going to give 1 minute and 30 seconds about my life in the key of B when I die. And that would be one of the guys I would want to get on the podcast. Let
me tell the listeners one of the reasons that's such a profound thing. There is such a marked difference in being able to write a song like that for a TV show, like a hook, like a theme song, you know, because it's, you have to get to certain places faster. It has to have a very palatable emotion, like something that makes you feel what the show won't makes you feel without distracting you, which is this really weird algorithm. It's like you got to get excited, and it's got to, every time it comes on, you got to feel a certain thing. And, you know, and so it's weird because, you know, you don't see a lot of people write commercially and write for theme songs or, you know, theme songs and stuff. You tend to find that people sort of do one of them pretty well. And guys like him, you just wonder like how much he tried to do the commercial thing. And people are like, listen, man, every time we write, it's only 1.5 minutes, but man, it makes me feel really specific things. And it's very storyish.
That's great. I mean, the Perfect Strangers theme, the last one, the last line is my life, my dreams, nothing's gonna stop me. It ends on a 2 minor chord. D minor.
Oh, that's right.
What ends on a 2 minor 7?
Whoa.
And then look at that little harmonica part. It's like, what in the world? Who ends a song on a 2 minor 7?
Oh, that little. Oh man, the harmonica part. Dang it.
Harmonica. So anyway,
that's one of the reasons. Like when you hear the Rembrandts doing the Friends thing, it feels like such an anomaly because that was kind of a song already.
Yeah.
And then they turned it into the hit, you know?
Yes.
Which I found that they didn't write, which was really interesting to me.
No, it was Allie Willis. Yeah, Allie Willis wrote it.
Talk about her on. We did an episode on
the Pretenders. Sorry,
Rembrandts.
Not even them.
We did one on
The Proclaimers. There we go.
Oh, the Proclaimers. Yeah,
500 Miles. Which and she wrote with them. She co-wrote that.
Wait, she co-wrote that?
Is that right? How did we get? Now the story is escaping me.
I can't remember which one it was.
Do you know what is still? I may have already done this in a hot take once, or I am going to, but I've got it queued up. I can't remember if I've done it or I'm going to, but one of my favorite lines of all music is in the 500 Miles song. And it's, I'd give almost every penny to you.
Yeah.
I love that line. It's not every penny, It's almost every penny. It's such an honest line. He's like, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not going to give all my money to you, but I'll give a lot of it to you. Yeah. I'm like, that's very real. I believe you. You actually have earned my trust, Proclaimer.
Okay, so to clarify, Allie Willis co-wrote the Friends theme song. Also co-wrote "September" by Earth, Wind and Fire. That's how we got to her. Yeah, she co-wrote with Mo White.
Dave's favorite tempo change song.
Oh man, I love that. Is I've had people ask me like, "What's the song? What's the one song if it comes on you dance?" And I'm like, "September." That's it. I can be at a funeral, and that's terrible. But it could be like, "And now we lay to rest," and I'll be like, "Shoot!" And I'm like, "Why is that guy standing up?" Oh God, I'm sorry, because my wife's like pinching me. Like, I'm sorry, baby, it's September.
So inappropriate.
Which may work at a funeral because it gets faster, and everybody would cumulatively like slowly get happier.
It'll work at my funeral because it'll follow Jesse Frederick singing the story of my life.
Yeah, it's true.
And a 2 minor harmonica solo. Oh, that's wonderful, man. These hot takes, you guys are delivering on every level that I needed you to deliver on. It's blessing me. All right, Rob, are we at 3?
Hot take 3.
Okay, yeah, number 3. All right, I'm going to call this hot take 1 + 1 = 0. Okay, so I'll Stand By You by the Pretenders, who I just gave away by saying the Pretenders, has one of the sneakiest key changes of all time. Or it might be better to say that it has 2 key changes that end up changing keys 0 at all. So at the end of the first chorus, I'll stand by you, won't let nobody hurt you, I'll stand by you. And then it hits flat 3, 4, flat 7 is the new key. Okay, so it goes down a step for the second verse, right? And then it does a key change a step up into the second chorus, putting it back where it was to begin with.
Why do you do that?
So, but it adds something that the drop in key adds a layer of emotion, and then you get the lift into the second chorus, which adds another layer. I don't know if they just didn't want to go up a whole other key. I think it's in. I can't remember if it's in D and would.
It's in D and goes to C.
Yeah, and then drops down to C and then back up to D.
Well, so here's the thing. You know what I wonder though? Thinking about it, that verse is higher than the chorus is. The melody.
It is. Yeah.
So I wonder if it was like I can't hit this like I want to.
Yeah.
So if we drop it and it takes the energy down for the verse, it goes high.
Yeah.
I'll stand by you. Then it just sort of sits, stand by you. It doesn't really get that high in the chorus. Right. So I wonder if that was something where they went, hey, you know what? We can, because how many times have you written a song, and anybody that's written a song knows this feeling, where you get through with it and you're like, oh, it feels great. Now sing it. And you sing it and you're like, oh boy. Yeah. That's higher than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Because you sing it in your head voice, and then you're like, all right, play it through. And you start singing, I can't. Man, boy, I don't know if I can hit that full voice. So you just wonder if at the end of that, right, they were like, oh, you know what we can do? Let's drop it for the verse and then come back up for the chorus. That is fascinating.
Well, another place that's used, it's not the same because it doesn't go down back. It's kind of in, I know you're a Steve Land, Hardaway Morris fan.
Oh my gosh.
Judkins in there is in You're the Sunshine of My Life. It goes down a step and a half, excuse me. So the song's in B, you're the sunshine of, and then it drops down to actually G sharp for what would be called I guess that's the verse. I guess it starts with the chorus in B and then it goes down.
Oh yeah.
Step and a half.
Oh yeah.
For the verse. That's weird. And then
let me tell you something about Steve Land Morris. That guy, I would argue, I'm just throwing hot takes on hot takes here. I think more than any other songwriter alive, this is the hottest of hot takes because I've just basically shouted this from the mountain. That guy does key changes more and better than anybody that's ever lived, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, like, if you think of a song of his, I promise you it's got a key change in it. Yeah. Like, I mean, and I've talked about this on hot takes, but My Sheree Moore, but another one, I remember covering Boogie on Reggae Woman, and the guy was like, have you done your research on this? Like, oh, dude, it'd be great. He's like, maybe you should play through it a few times before we all cover it. And I was like, sure. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Boogie on, and then you Boogie on Reggae Woman. I was like, why? In the middle of the chorus?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you, Stevie? I mean, he is, to me, untouchable with that stuff. It's like, because his brain, I think that wasn't key changing to him.
Yeah.
He was like, no, that's where the melody goes. You're like, well, okay, sure. But like, you know what you're doing? He's like, yeah, no, that's it needs to go there.
That's awesome.
But think of the band, man. My God.
Oh my gosh. Nathan Watts. It's like, it doesn't bother me. I'm just back here playing the bass, man. It's all notes to me.
All right, I feel for my third, I need to go in classic JP fashion, nothing super musical. The greatest she mullet in the history of rock and roll has got to go to Pat Benatar.
Patty B.
I can't think of a better she mullet. There's tons of good guy mullets in the 80s. You know, anything in the 80s. You got Kenny Loggins, you got, you know, anybody, whatever from the 80s. But I can't think of a better female mullet than Pat Benatar. Maybe Joan Jett's kind of in the running.
Oh, dude. She's got to be in the running, right?
Maybe Dolly Parton at sometimes.
Did Cher? I feel like Cher would be in that game.
Yeah, kind of be in the game.
She had the bangs.
If I could turn back time.
My favorite, nobody's going to know probably other than us CCM listeners, but Margaret Becker had an album called Never for
Wow.
Do yourself a favor and pull up the cover of Never for Nothing. Whatever you do, stop it right now and look at
We could stop the podcast right now, and you just earned so much respect from me that you referenced a Margaret Becker, not of current state. That'd be one thing. Like, what's she up to? Let's go.
Old school Margaret Becker for you.
Oh my
Margaret
gosh! When on that Dan Hasseltine interview, when you referenced Larnell Harris and Twyla Paris, my friends in high school called her Twyla Paris because we thought she was really fancy. I was like, I'm like transported to another time, another place.
While we're on this CCM thing, can I throw in something that was a contender, probably about number 8 on my picks, but won't make it for its own? This album is arguably in the best ever. It's Burlap to Cashmere.
No doubt.
Anybody out there? It's
no doubt
the greatest combination of nonsense lyrics, percussion, and wild acoustic guitar. I love that.
So now this is your fault, JP, but I'm gonna tributary off here for a second. When I was in college, still top 5 shows of all time I saw them play at Exit In for about 50 people. And I was like a sophomore in college. And this was in a season where me and my friends used to drive from Nashville all the time to see shows, especially like cool CCM bands. Cause that was like, to me, the kind of like the pinnacle of Christian music was those like 4 years between 96 and 2004, 2002.
Absolutely.
Or sorry, 2000 and 2002. But anyway, we drove up, and I mean, that show was so good. This is just one of my detrimental characteristics. I never stay at a show the whole time. At some point, I'm just like, okay, I'm good. And other than Stevie Wonder or
that's
like
one of Rob's pet peeves, like you just enjoyed him.
I know. I'm sorry
for the encore.
I know it's blame it on a career. It's like one of my career because I do it. I think,
sure.
But that show, I remember it ended, and I was like, please don't be done. It was incredible. Now, fast forward, and so I loved them. I bought that CD when it came out. Like I remember going to the store and like I was waiting for them to open so I could go buy that album because I loved anything Squint did. Steve Taylor put out on the label. Yep. But I remember fast forward, 6 years, and Steve moves to town, Delopolis.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine shoots and I was like, and he had just broken off to do his own thing. And I remember being like, dude, I want to meet this guy. My buddy's like, oh, he's great. You should meet him. So we meet. He becomes a really good friend. Like we hung out all the time. This is before I was married. And so it was like, just, hey, you want to go grab tacos? Like done, like it just one of the warmest, most wonderful people. But I would go pick him up. He'd be like, Dave, we'll play the song for you. He's kind of that guy. He's from New York. And he would play these songs and I'd be like, how did you do that? Do you know what I mean? It's his brain is from such a different orbit that it was like, and maybe y'all feel this way, but like when you've listened to music or played it enough, you kind of know oh, that's where you put the little door. Oh, okay, clever you. And I see how the windows and I can get in there and I know, okay, got it. He would play songs. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to start that. I don't know how to do, you know what I mean? Like there's no, and then one of my favorite conversations with him, he came and played a show with me in Knoxville at the time. And we're in the car and I'm just like, dude, can I just ask you a bunch of questions about your song? He's like, that's what, literally the nicest guy you've ever met. I promise. And I was like, whatever. Treasures in Heaven. He's like, oh, and every explanation of his song, to your point, JP, he'd be like, I don't know, it's just kind of, that's what I sang. And I was like, what? No, nobody just sings lyrics like that. And he'd be like, I don't. And then he'd try to explain it, and it wouldn't make sense.
Treasures in Heaven to me is like if Extreme More Than Words met him doing his best Phil Collins vocal impression on top of each other.
You know, it's weird you bring that up. I listened to that record from front to back a week ago.
That's awesome.
For no reason. For no reason. I just put it on and I was like, I just want to listen to all of this right now for the day.
I introduced it to my wife this past week. My wife is from Mexico and she was dancing like they do in Mexico. It was wonderful all the way through it. So
note to self, always play her burlap together.
Yeah, it was wonderful.
That album, okay, this is the last time I say it because I have so much love for that record. You know, in my humble opinion, CCM of olden day, you know, before it became sort of more of a praise-centric genre like it is now, it put out a couple records to me that were truly like really monumental records. Not just this is great music, but like it doesn't matter if this is mainstream or gospel. This is just incredible music. I put Jars of Clay's first record in that. I put Jesus Freak to me is in that world. But Burlap may be the top of that to me because it was just so where did that come from? Nobody was doing that at the time. And you know, you can hear the influences really strongly. That's not the point. I just think what they created from all those influences and how it was a CCM, even though arguably kind of wasn't. I just remember thinking like, this is incredible. I can't believe this is on this label and these guys are this good. And that album still, I mean, and it holds up. I listened to it, I was like, this is every bit as good as it was, if not maybe better, you know, 20 years ago. I just said 20 years ago. Does that make everybody else feel a little?
Right, yeah.
Jeez. Okay. I got to come off my burlap little thing there.
That was good. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
Hot take 4.
All right. Hot take number 4 from me. I'm going to have to cut one that I really love. Okay. But I think this is the one for the moment. This is what I'm feeling. All right. Black Betty by Ram Jam. Okay.
That's the take. Cocaine were you on?
Okay. Here's my hot take on Black Betty. First of all, everybody loves that song. Everybody, it's one of those songs you can't not sing along with, in the car. Yeah. But my take is that Ram Jam should have either rehearsed more or played with a click when they recorded Black Betty. Because if you listen to it from a production standpoint, it's a disaster. It is like, I have no idea what's going on in that song, and it would be totally unlistenable if it wasn't so cool. Like, the tempo is changing. They have the hits when the hits that come in out of nowhere, and they come in like out of time, out of nowhere. It's just a nightmare from a production standpoint. If it wasn't so catchy and cool, you would never be able to get through it.
Pam-ba-lam.
Wait, do they say the name of the band in that song?
No, but they should.
It rhymes. It would fit.
Yeah. Black Betty, jam a ram. You know, something. I don't know.
Do they say jam for the lamb? Oh, Black Betty and jam for the lamb.
We're back on CCM.
It's all coming around. So anyway, to recap, Ram Jam should have practiced more.
The end. That sounds like something their manager might have said to him too when they turned that in. They're like, listen, man, you got a great hook. There's no denying it.
He's like, I'm going to send it to radio anyway, but just so you know.
Wait, I want to ask a fun question because y'all would actually probably be able to answer this. I don't know that I can, so I'm not putting pressure on you because I don't think I can. What are the songs you would actually apply that same thought to that were hits? Or I'm just going to give it radio songs that you hear and you're like, had they played this song before together?
Oh gosh, I don't know if I can just pull one out of the air.
I'll tell you one. Here's one of mine. The guitar solo on "Dr. My Eyes" by Jackson Brown is
I love that
guitar
song
solo of all time. and so I found out, and God willing, I hope that guy doesn't listen to this podcast if he's still alive. God bless you, whoever played that. But I remember being on the road with a buddy of mine, and he has a friend like y'all, where he was like, "My buddy will know this," and so he texted him. This is 15 years ago. He's like, "Hey, what's the story on the Dr. My Eyes solo?" He's like, "Dude." Apparently the story is like, of course, this guy knew this.
Of course.
Oh, you know who it is? It's Clay Cook.
Oh, okay.
That's in Zach Brown Band.
Yeah.
That was the infamous co-writer of Neon and some of John Mayer's early stuff. But Clay is like y'all. He's just like, he knows everything about everything. And he said, apparently, I don't know if this is true, so anybody listening to this can fact check us. But so I'm putting a huge asterisk by this because I don't know if it's true. But he said the guy didn't know they were recording. And he was like running it to kind of just get it. And at the end, I guess producer was like, "Cool, we got it." And he's like, "No." And he's like, "No, that's it." And he's like, "No." It is terrible. It is truly God bless him, and he's a better guitar player than I am, whoever that was, but it's really not good.
The worst one is, I have to trump you. It's not that. It's intentionally played in the wrong key. It's Mark Tremonti on With Arms Wide Open is the worst guitar solo ever. It's definitely in the wrong key. He's a fantastic guitar player, but song's in C and he's straight up playing an F. So listen to it.
Dude, I have to go listen to that now.
When you're done, do yourself a favor. And Mark Tremonti, we love you. We'll hope to have you on the podcast soon to talk about Creed. But that's it's awful.
Wait, Rob, you got to have one of these. Surely there's somewhere that you have a recording or a solo or something where you're like, how did these guys not know what was happening?
Nothing is coming to mind. I'm drawing a total blank.
He'll send you a text later. We'll drop it in.
I will.
One of the other, this is not particular to a song, but it's more of a thing. Ed Cash, one of my best friends and producer of my records forever, was the guy that hipped me to his hatred for pentatonic blues solos over major changes, which I didn't know that was a thing. Mm-hmm. And so my 22-year-old self, I come in and play him this song that I love. I still love this song. And he's sitting listening like, yeah. And the guy starts doing the piano solo in the middle of the song. And he's like, oof. And I'm like, it's good, huh? He's like, just hold on. The song gets done. I'm like, what do you think? He's like, he does that thing I can't stand. I was like, what? He's like, it was like a blues solo over just major changes. And I was like, and it was like he suddenly made a mind's eye for me. That was like, and it opened. And since then, I can't, unless it's super tasteful and very purposed. And this guy or girl, she knows exactly what she's doing. And that's why it's cool. Otherwise, like that thing, it is like it just crawls down my spine and starts shaking me. I'm like, I can't do it.
You get one lick. You get one blues lick.
Yes. Yeah. And you know why? I think most of the time it's because people don't know. You maybe think of it because of Mark Tremonti. And look, Mark may be a genius. I don't know him at all. But it tends to be when people, they only learn blues scales. And then someone's like, hey, here's. And they're like, what? They're doing all the bends and the blues. And you're like, oh, sweet. Dude. It is, isn't it? It's like once, and I hope we didn't affect people that are listening to this podcast, because it is one of those things that once somebody shows you, you never unhear it.
Yep, absolutely.
And it'll ruin so many Rolling Stone songs.
Everything positive we had with the mullets, we just went down south with the blues.
Oh, that was good. That blessed me deeply.
All right, number 4 for me. I'm down to 2, so I gotta be selective. Okay, we'll go with "Glycerine" by Bush. Is the most hard rock song ever to not have drums. There are no drums in "Glycerine" by Bush. The honorable mentions that I have, my favorite is "Welcome to the Machine" by Pink Floyd, but it's got cymbals at the end, so I can't really count that because that's a percussion instrument. Closely followed by "Eleanor Rigby" by the Beatles, but it's got the look at all the. That's not very hard rock. It's too sweet, so that doesn't count. So I gotta go with "Glycerine" by Bush is the most hard rock song to not have drums. Simple progression, just 1-5-6-4. But I mean, it's the way it's played and delivered. I can't think of a more hard rock song without drums.
What a issue! What a challenge issue to try to think of the hardest rock song without drums. Like my brain is like flipping over, and it's.
And I thought about this because the last time we hung out with you, I came out and I sat down in the car and Lightning Crashes was playing by Live. And I'm like, man, it takes forever for the drums to come in on this song. I can't even remember when they come in. And I'm like, wow, I wonder if I was like, what other songs are rock without drums? And I kid you not, the next song on the radio was "Glycerine" by Bush. And I was like, well, there's my answer.
God
it was
just
like
answered you.
Question answered.
Dude, that's crazy. What a great hot take. Win. That's a huge. I mean, I've got no. I can't think of anything right now. I love this too. Is I always imagine somebody's listening, like yelling in their car. Come on, what about? And
it's
they're just yelling it over. Yeah.
Somebody online, or I think I saw a meme that said the closest you can come in real life to being a ghost is knowing an answer that a podcast host is trying to think of while you're listening. You're just going, no.
That's amazing.
So there's probably something out there. I didn't do a whole lot of deep research on it, but those are the ones that just came to my head. And that's because they were presented to me. Like, it was like I wouldn't have maybe thought of "Glycerine" right off the top of my head, but it followed "Lightning Crashes," which helped me.
Yeah, that's good.
God, that's really going to mess with me today. Okay. Well done. Well played.
Number 5.
This is big, Rob. You got to make some decisions.
Hot take 5.
Okay. All right. I'm going with this. This was the scorcher. Okay, this could get me canceled. It's gonna get me canceled. I could be out of the club after this.
Mm.
To be such a classic song, "Sexual Healing" by Marvin Gaye is not very good. This is my take, and here's why.
Come on.
If somebody other than Marvin Gaye brought you that song, you'd be like, yeah, okay, let's try and work on this and see if we can pull something out of it. It really has the one strong line, right? When I get this feeling, I need sexual healing. And other than that, the whole song really just meanders. There's no strong hooks or melodies to speak of, except maybe the get up, get up, get up, wake up, which, by the way, since the Marvin Gaye estate is about suing people over maybe plagiarizing, why haven't they not gone after Bone Thugs and Harmony?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's the first of the month.
Wake up. It's the first of the month. Get up, get up, get up, get up. It's the same, but that's my hot take on Marvin Gaye. I'm sorry. You're not supposed to do that to Marvin Gaye.
I'm literally taking notes because my brain is flying at such a quick pace. Here's one of my pushbacks about that song. That it's good for me, but that part is bad. I'm falling. That little part is, but I'm kind of with you. It is one of those songs that if you type the lyrics out, you're like, oh, there's 7 words.
Yeah.
And the whole song, it feels like
nothing really repeats, except for that one line.
That is a song I will tell you.
Changing all the way through.
I would cry my eyes out, and this is way too big because there'd be a million songs. But that is one I would use as an archetype for if you had a different band playing that song, it would be nowhere near as good of a song. Yeah. Like just some white dudes playing it. Yeah, it would be so unbelievably boring.
Can you imagine a guy at like a coffee shop playing it on guitar, like just strumming? You know what I mean? Like,
oh my gosh, or just doing the over and over, trying to sing the song over that. Like,
dude, you're a perv. Sexual healing. Get off. Get away.
Yeah, get away. Yeah, don't get off.
But Marvin Gaye got away with it.
Yeah, he did. The thing I wrote, I laughed so hard. And here's I'm the king of the tributary here, but here's the offshoot. Bone to me. Isn't it funny what they did? I saw the funniest story on Instagram this guy posted where he was like, Crossroads comes on and it's his dad. He's like our age and he's like, oh, this is my jam. He's like, all right, here we go. Like, have you ever known a song where the form of something
and I miss my Uncle Charles, y'all. And,
there's like 7 lines in that everybody sings to the crowd, but the rhythm. It's like learning.
Roll strobe.
You're basically learning a drum solo.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's like the rhythm is what you know, and the hook and the melody, but it's funny you said that about Bone because I laughed so hard because I was like, that song is such an anomaly for, and them as their whole thing. Like First of the Month was the same, but it's like those they got you by the rhythm of what they sang, not really because nobody knows what they sang.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But you just love the sort of being in doing that 2-note little king. It's like something in your brain is like, yes.
A brilliant hot take of yours early on was the fact that they were the forerunner of like modern country melodies.
Yeah, 20 years later. Yeah,
I forgot about that. That's right.
Yeah.
I just remember driving in my car one day and I was listening to country music. Like, somebody has been listening to a ton of Bone, which is a really weird thing to say out loud as a sentence. Oh, that's good. I love that. That's a good one.
All right, grand finale for me. I used all my good ones. This is as controversial as it gets. The greatest 1-2 punch of the 80s with lead vocalist and electric guitarist is.
Whoa! I just want to pause before you say this. Because this is a big one.
This is a huge one. This is
the era. The 80s was the era of the ripping guitar solo.
Absolutely.
Guitarist and the rock and roll.
And the rock and roll vocalist. The best combination of the two for JP, this could be debated for years, is drum roll, Steve Perry, Neil Schon, Journey. And I'll tell you why, and then you can tell me why I'm wrong, or you can go, Bon Jovi, you can go wherever. But let's just talk 80s. Okay, so 78 had Infinity, that had Wheel in the Sky, Patiently Lights. 79, Evolution, Lovin', Touchin', Squeezin'. First album of 80 is Departure with Any Way You Want It. Okay, then we go 81, Escape. Let me tell you the track listing on this album as this vinyl, as I hold it up in front of your face on the screen. Escape has Don't Stop Believin', Stone in Love, Who's Crying Now, Keep on Running, Still They Ride, Escape, Mother, Father, and it ends with Open Arms.
Ends with
Open Arms. And it also inspired one of the greatest Atari games ever. And it was the first album to feature Jonathan Cain, but whatever. That's how they start the heyday of their 80s, is 81 with that album.
Right.
Follow it up with Frontiers, which has Separate Ways, Send Her My Love, Faithfully, After the Fall. Boom. So, and then 86, Raised on Radio, where they brought in Randy Jackson on bass. They should have kept Ross Valerie, but that's another story. I'll Be All Right Without You.
That's another story for another time.
And Be Good to Yourself. So
can we just talk really quickly how good that song is? I'll Be all right Without You.
Yes, please.
God, that song is so good.
Wonderful. On Raised on Radio. So,
can we just, for people listening, let's talk about who that beats.
Yes.
So let's just listen. We have Bon Jovi. We have Aerosmith. And in that era,
but we're talking 80s. That doesn't include only. That doesn't include the 70s era. That doesn't include the 90s era.
You have like some of those kind of
I think Aerosmith got a bump in the 90s, actually, believe it or not. So if you're going 1980 to 1989, the greatest combination is those two.
Which let me tell you, the Van Halen.
Well, I'm taking it
furious right now.
No, because I'm a Van Halen guy, but they get a bump for me with Sammy Hagar.
See, I'm the
which
same.
Runs into the 90s. So I put Perry and Sean over Eddie and Roth. Now, if Eddie and Hagar are in the 80s only, I'm
actually with you.
It's a different conversation for me.
I'm trying not to explode over here because
where are you on this?
Well, okay, just thinking of Van Halen albums in the 80s. Okay, you
84,
Diver Down, which is their least successful, but my favorite. 1984.
Okay, that's a banger.
Then you've got two Sammy Hagar albums, 5150, your favorite Van Halen album.
But doesn't
and OU812 in 1988.
But they get For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge and Balance in the 90s, which would jump. If those hit in the 80s, we're having a completely different conversation. But those landed in the 90s. So we're going 80s, Steve Perry, Neil Schon. Let me give them another boost too. Me and Rob were talking Journey. He didn't even know I was going to use a Journey hot take. If you see them live in the 80s, let's talk about how on their tracks, Don't Stop Believing is like 119 BPM. Live, it's 125. Okay, so they're going faster. Let's talk about how much faster Wheel in the Sky is live. Okay, it's 105 on the studio track. It's 125 live. So, and Neil Schon plays the same guitar solo that he plays at 105, which is stupid fast, at 125 live.
Dude, that is so much faster.
It is running. It is speeding. Get your click track, look it up, watch their live in Philadelphia at JFK. It's 125. It's ridiculous.
Holy cow.
So anyway, that's my take.
That'll take a 4-minute song to a 2-minute 45 song.
It really is. They have a 30-minute set because they played this, and it's like they just like, well, we'll just do everything faster. We want to keep the same set.
I wonder if
it's moving.
That.
It's adrenaline. And Rob was talking about how that's why he likes to play with a click live. And that's why I don't like a click because I just want to get in and just, I'm adrenaline. Let's just do it.
Yeah. I want to fight my own adrenaline. I need the click brings me freedom. I go, at least if everything else goes wrong, I know this was at the right tempo.
Oh, dude, that is to me one of the great dilemmas of live shows. Do you follow the passion and where your heart's going and then never listen to the playback? Don't do it.
Exactly.
Or do you maybe sacrifice some of the adrenaline of the live show, but then when you go back and watch it on YouTube, you're like, God, look how good we sound.
That's right.
You know, so here's one of I love playing this game with my Nashville friends, my other Nashville songwriters. And it's the game of like, who would be the most, and I'm going to let y'all play this which I've sort of already shown my hand here, but stay with me. Who would be the worst? Actually, y'all would be really fun to play this with because y'all know this world so well. Who would be the worst round for you to be in for how good these songwriters are? And let me add let me add some qualifications. It can't be the artist. So not Michael Jackson. That's a cheat. I mean, like songwriters, like who would be the worst for just how many hits they're dropping that you're never going to follow? That you're just like, there's no way to beat this. Okay. So like, again, you're in Nashville. It's 10 Pan South. There's a round. They're like, hey, JP, Rob, we want you guys to come play, and let's even say you've had a bunch of hits, right? Who are the three people? I'll give you two. Who are the two people you're like, I don't want to be in that round?
Oh gosh. I think I immediately jumped to like Wayne Kirkpatrick.
Yep. Yeah, that's a great one. That's a really, really good one.
And like any of that crew, the Tommy Sims, like the, you know, gosh, who you got, JP?
Man, I don't know.
I mean, it could be anybody. Well, let me just jump to the end of this so you guys can be relieved.
Give us one or two of yours.
I've thought about this at length.
This keeps you.
And
like,
I've had people. I've had Tony Arata, like Who Wants to Follow the Dance. You know, like Who Wants to Follow. That list is too long. But let me tell you who tops the list, and I will never budge on this being true. Okay, Jonathan Cain.
Okay.
Oh,
don't stop.
Can you imagine a worse person to follow in a round? Okay, like that, because you got the dance. You got Friends in Low Places in Nashville. It's going to shut the place down. But guess what? It's not going to beat. Dun, do 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 do. You can't follow Journey songs, and I don't. Other than maybe Michael Jackson, because Journey has this thing, and this is where I'm backing you up, JP. Watch how I make this.
Thank you. I appreciate the support.
They didn't have songs; they had global anthems.
That's wonderful.
And I think to me, like, you can find a kid in Malaysia and they play Beat It and he's like, I love the song. You start playing Journey, Don't Stop Believing, and that kid's gonna like rip his shirt off and run around swinging around his head. I mean, it's, you know, they're global hits. They're global hits. And so I think
that's awesome.
For me, that's the difference between a huge song and then a song that's like, no, this isn't just loved in America and Europe and the English speaking, you know, England. This is loved in frickin' Taiwan. Do you know what I'm saying? And so Jonathan, he is to me.
And his wife gets up and prays the prayer of salvation with Paula White. It's like, oh, we're done. Like,
call it. And so I think like that I've laughed. And the reason it made me think about it is I saw a Tin Pan South email one year and it was him standing singing in a round. And I thought, that's my nightmare. There it is. That's it fully. And because then I played the game of like, well, who else would be, again, as a writer, that's a big qualification, not an artist. And I was like, I can't think of anybody that's worse. And of course, somebody in their, you know, minivan right now is yelling someone that I'm not thinking about as they listen. But to me, he is the archetype for like every time the round comes around, I'm like, oh gosh.
The one I would think of would be Carole King. And that's just because she's written stuff for everybody. And her stuff's going to run the gambit of happy. And there's going to be some crying in there.
You make me feel.
I mean, yeah, it's passion at its fullest. And then I'm going to get up there and be this quirky guy. So I'm not going to translate well as following Carole King. So that's my nightmare. Like, who brought this guy?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's the one.
Can I interject a Journey hot take?
Oh, please do.
Fold it into this.
Yeah.
Just fold in the cheese. Okay. So here's what I'm going to do. Lights by Journey is my favorite song that half the lyrics are unfinished.
Oh my gosh. Please explain that.
There's so much whoa whoa and na na in that song.
That's right.
Okay, so every verse ends when the lights go down in the city and the sun shines on the bay, right? I want to get back to my city. Oh, oh. And then literally now I'm going to kick it up a notch. Now sing the bridge, right? So out on the road without you touch. They like literally just didn't bother finishing the lyric.
You know what that is? I can tell you. Cut to Steve Perry sitting in his house with let's just for the fun of this say he wrote it with somebody, and they're like, "When are y'all recording again?" He's like, "Dude, tomorrow." Shoot. Okay, I gotta go. I gotta pick up my daughter right now. Shoot. Okay, tonight. No. We got this thing downtown. God. What time do y'all go in, dude? We're at like 10. Ah, man. Okay. I tell you what, I'll call you in the morning. I'm going to stay up tonight and try to finish the lyrics. Steve's like, great. Well, like, you know, it doesn't happen. The guy sleeps in, he walks in the studio and they're like, all right, Steve, we going to do lights? He's like, yeah. No, let's do it. And he just, you know, na, no, whoa. And then he's like, hey, Jim, what's up, man? He's like, hey, dude, I finally got this. He's like, yeah, so the bad news is, let me tell you the good news. We cut lights. It sounds like a hit. He's like, that's great. And he's like, so here's the bad news. They love it. Well, what do you mean they love it? No, they like the whoa whoa na-nas. And he's like, we didn't write any whoa whoa na-nas. And he's like, well, they're on there now. And so we may have started a new genre.
That was a placeholder till we could get the lyrics in, and we're keeping it.
Yeah. Now it's just whoa whoa. I just like whoa whoa na-nas as a word. I just want that to be. I want that to be a children's show.
It's
the whoa whoa na-nas.
The whoa whoa na-nas. To me, it sounds like a place where you don't want to get hit.
No, that's what you yell when they're trying to hit them. Whoa, 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 no. That's good. Oh my gosh, guys, you guys are legends. This was so much fun. And I have to tell you, those were exactly what I hoped for. They were well-informed. They were passionate. They were opinionated, and they were hot. You guys really delivered. So tell people really quick before we sign off, tell everybody a little bit about what you guys do on the podcast and why they should listen.
Okay, we say it every time. Every time we celebrate the greatest songs in modern music history. We tell you what makes them great, why we think they're awesome, and why you should too. And then I say, JP, how you doing today? And
Man,
he says,
I'm doing fantastic. I just blah 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 blah.
But that's the goal. Is like we keep it light, we keep it fun. We celebrate. We don't even we try not to get into a lot of like tragedy. If there's if a song has, we just try and keep it. We're like the Jimmy Fallon of song podcasts. We're the opposite of like your NPR.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Where they really dig into like the emotional trenches. We're like the, hey, let's, but still want you to leave like feeling like you learned something, Yeah. I think to this day, the best story that I've learned, and there's no way I can tell the whole story, but like one of the funnest things that I've learned on our show is we did an episode on I Wish by Skee-Lo. Everybody knows
was
a little bit taller.
Yeah.
The story of learning why the 64 Impala is important to hip hop culture. It is in that episode, and it was mind blowing. It made me feel so good. Anyway,
People got to listen. I love that. Give a tease. That's right.
Want to learn something that's going to make you feel good today. Go listen to our episode on I Wish. But that's kind of what we do. We just talk about why the stuff is awesome and why we love it.
And we've had a good run of getting to interview a lot of people over the past run. We've had like 30 or 40 in the past couple months or so, and it's been so rewarding to get to hear them say how what we do matters and like bring them back. So that really helps.
Yeah, you guys really do.
In large part, thanks to you, by the way.
Thank you, Dave.
The first time we've told you this personally, but the first time you came on our show, it opened so many other doors for us because you were somebody who's right now, you know what I mean? We've talked to some older guys who are quote unquote past their prime or whatever, but so we always will be eternally grateful for that. So man, thank you.
And
go ahead.
And we don't have a blue check mark. We're just we're your average guys. Everybody that's been on your hot takes has the blue check mark. We don't even have like an X or a red check. We're just like happy to be in the conversation.
I kid you not. Our Twitter feed has an emoji on it of, I think it's sushi because it's the closest thing I could find that looks like
I love that. Classic sushi move.
Yeah.
Well, thank you guys. And again, if anybody's listening before we check out, if you get a chance, listen to it. It's such a great podcast. And if you like music at all, you will love that podcast. These guys you guys crush it. So thank you so much for coming on and dropping some hot knowledge, hot takes.
Dave's 5 hot takes. Yeah.